There's been yet another outcry about objectification and sexist treating of women. This time it's an advert for lingerie. And the poster ad for Glasgow retailer Silks, featuring a woman in lingerie leaning forward to emphasise her bust. I mean, women never choose lingerie based on that, do they? But only showed her body and not her face or her head, has been banned by the Advertising Standards Authority. They say it objectifies women and is likely to cause offence. But it's an advert for lingerie. Shouldn't it have a picture of a woman wearing lingerie? Do we need to see her face to know that she's wearing lingerie? And should we be banning adverts because they might cause someone offence? Well, let's talk about this with Brendan O'Neill, who's an editor of Spiked Online and a free speech campaigner. Good morning to you, Brendan.
Hi, Julia.
Well, I mean, this goes on further from those beach body ready adverts that were on the London Tube that everyone got in a fuss about, including the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, a year or so ago. I just thought the woman, I mean, I'm a heterosexual through and through. I thought she looked absolutely gorgeous and stunning, and I'd love to have a body like it on the beach. And yet, apparently, it was demeaning me and making me feel objectified and awful and undermining me. And it turns out this lingerie ad is too. Do you think it should have been banned?
Absolutely not. I'm amazed at how prudish and censorious feminist thinking has become. And it's really extraordinary. You know, I thought that feminism was supposed to be in part about sexual liberation and allowing women to enjoy that side of life in a way that men have for decades and centuries and millennia and so on. But in fact, you know, the feminist justification these days is increasingly that we have to remove any saucy image of women from public life. We have to take lads' mags off the shelves. We have to get rid of page 3, and we have to cover women up. It's this very rigid, boring, Mary Whitehouse style view seems to have grown out of feminism. And if I was a feminist, I'd be really worried about that.
Well, I mean, I am a feminist, but it's not the way I think. I mean, I'm just looking at this advert, and again, it's a woman wearing lingerie. I'm not quite sure what else you would have on the advert, and I don't know why I need to see her face. What I find fascinating is the adverts that are considered to be empowering of women. There's one advert for a plus size range which features women who are, I'm sorry, grossly obese. They don't just like an extra pudding now and then. They're not a healthy size 12, 14, 16. We are talking about women who are very, I mean, clinically they no question at all, BMI over 30. And these women are prancing around in their bikinis or in their lingerie, looking very, very happy about it. Now, because it's a woman who's overweight, those adverts are regarded as in somehow empowering for women. So is the issue, if the woman is someone who would be considered to be sexually attractive to the average heterosexual male, that's wrong, and otherwise it's okay?
I think that's what it is. I think what we're witnessing, both from politicians like Sadiq Khan and also from the Advertising Standards Authority, is this new morality policing. You know, the ASA is supposed to just decide if an advert is accurate or if it's telling lies and so on, and that's a good thing for the ASA to do. We can't have adverts that make things up. But what it's increasingly become is the morality police that is trying to cleanse public life of images that it feels are offensive, or which 3 or 4 people feel are offensive. Often its decisions are based on the complaints of tiny numbers of people. And one of the moral judgments that people like this are making is that it's fine to see big bodies, overweight bodies, empowered bodies, but it's really problematic for some reason to see very slim bodies or traditionally bodies that were traditionally considered to be sexually attractive. And so they're making this moral judgment about what it's good for the public to see and what it's good in particular for women to see. And
what might hurt us or not hurt us.
Exactly. So they feel in an incredibly patronizing way, in my view, that if a woman sees an image of a slim woman on the underground, her self-esteem will be destroyed, she will feel inadequate, and she'll be depressed.
She'll probably have to eat more cake to fill up.
Well, exactly. And I think that's a really patronising view of women who are more than capable of seeing images and not being crushed
and
by
especially
them.
As an awful lot of women, I'm not one of them, spend most of their spare cash on buying magazines featuring pictures of beautiful, slim women and telling them how to diet and goodness knows what. What I find fascinating about this ASA ruling, the Advertising Standards Authority ruling, said, we considered that by focusing entirely on the model's body without showing her head, bearing in mind this is an advert for sexy lingerie, and in the context of a sexually suggestive pose and byline, because it says tease the season, the image invited viewers to view the woman's body as a sexual object. Now, given that the woman is wearing very sexy underwear with stockings, I mean, I'm not quite sure what a woman. I mean, that's not what I would wear on a normal day. With I mean, if you don't want to be, you're not going to be wearing lingerie like that unless you want to be seen as a sexual object. I do find this utterly perplexing. But is it interesting that the rules are different for men as for women? I mean, all the newspapers are quite happy to feature this picture of the actor in Poldark, Aidan Turner, topless, very muscly on their. I mean, it's been all over the papers this last week. Calvin Klein adverts, a hunky, muscular model, a whole, Times Square taken up with a huge picture of a man in his pants. No one seems to think that these images are going to make men like you feel desperately unhappy about your lives and feel objectified.
Yes, exactly. And I think that is where, feminism in some quarters has gone horribly wrong. And I think one of the consequences of that is to actually rehabilitate the old sexist idea that women are more morally frail and morally fragile than men. And I think what we're now seeing the consequences of that in public life, where we have a situation where it is presumed that men are pretty able to cope with images of hunks on bus stops and with male fitness magazines, which always have people with 6-packs or even 8-packs on the front.
You're sounding bitter, Brendan. You're sounding bitter.
So, we can cope with this because, we're men. But women can't possibly be expected to deal with images of slim women or page 3 or whatever else it might be. So there is an incredibly sexist element to this double standard censorship.
I have to say, every time I see these stories, it just makes me think of The Handmaid's Tale and this need to protect women in this way. I find fascinating. I thought you'd be interested in this also. Goldie Hawn, of course, the Hollywood actress, made a very, very long career as an actress, but started out as a go-go dancer on TV, wearing bikini, basically dancing, on a podium. And she has given an interview yesterday, said that she felt very uncomfortable about being objectified when she was dancing as a go-go dancer. I mean, it's become laughable now, isn't it?
It has become laughable. And, the truth of the matter of people like Goldie Hawn, in fact, and other actresses in particular who came through in the late 60s and the 1970s, actually one of the good things they did was to reclaim their sexual power, in fact. So I don't accept the idea that these people were casually being objectified, particularly when they went into acting. I think actually a part of that process of the second wave of feminism and women's liberation in the 70s was the idea, as Germaine Greer and others said, which is that women can be sexy and that's not a problem. And we shouldn't have that kind of 1950s style buttoned up fear of women's sexual attractiveness. And that's the thing that's coming back. The pre-feminist view of women's bodies as something dangerous which shouldn't be displayed in public life. That's making a comeback under the guise of feminism, and that's really weird.